SpongeBob didn't just make you laugh or fill Saturday mornings. He's made you feel, think, and act the way you do now, without you even noticing it. Think about it. How did a show about a hyperactive sponge and his starfish best friend become the voice of a generation? And for some of us, the voices in our heads. Well, my friends, grab your Krabby Patties because that's where our story gets interesting. You see, SpongeBob hit the airwaves in 1999, and it all started at a small community college in California, where a marine biology teacher named Steven Hillenburg was cooking up something big. He loved drawing and wanted to bring the world of marine biology into a more creative space. The result was SpongeBob. Hillenburg's vision was simple. He wanted to make a show that was funny, weird, and fun for both kids and adults. But he also slipped in educational nods to the ocean and its creatures, a tribute to his science background. SpongeBob was supposed to be the every kid, the embodiment of curiosity, and a sponge that soaked up life with boundless enthusiasm. Hillenburg's genius was making a character who could be naive, endlessly optimistic, and yet somehow relatable to adults who were probably way too tired to have that much pep in their step. What's wild is that Hillenburg never set out to make a show with a big message or deeper meaning. He just wanted it to be fun. Yet here we are, dissecting it like it's a piece of literature. Hillenburg created SpongeBob to be a break from reality, a zany underwater escape where sponges talk, snails meow, and crabs have a suspicious obsession with money. But it ended up becoming a cultural icon. Think about it, how many shows get to stick around for over 20 years, racking up countless awards and movie spin-offs? SpongeBob managed to grab our attention mainly because it wasn't just a cartoon. It was a cultural phenomenon, and how did this show do it? By being unapologetically SpongeBob. From his high-pitched laugh to his knack for finding joy in the most mundane things like flipping burgers, SpongeBob became the face of not just Nickelodeon, but an entire era of cartoons. This show somehow managed to be educational without feeling like homework, and chaotic without causing too many parental complaints. Well, maybe some parent complaints, but we'll get to that drama later. But here's where it gets really interesting. SpongeBob wasn't just lucky with timing. It was a masterclass in character creation. Every single character in Bikini Bottom is like that one friend we all have. There's Squidward, the guy who's too artistic and sophisticated for this nonsense. Patrick, the lovable goofball who makes you feel better about your life choices. And Mr. Krabs, well, he's basically everyone's first boss who made them work on their birthday. The show's creators pulled off something that seemed impossible. They made a kids show that adults couldn't help but watch. While kids were laughing at Patrick getting hit with a board, parents were catching subtle references to everything from classic literature to existential dread. I mean, think about the Pickles episode from the first season. SpongeBob forgets how to make a Krabby Patty, which is basically a metaphor for imposter syndrome. Mind blown. But let's talk about that humor for a second. SpongeBob was ahead of its time. Before memes were even a thing, this show was pumping out moments that were basically pre-internet memes. Before Twitter, before TikTok, before social media was even a thing, SpongeBob was creating infinitely quotable moments that would eventually become the internet's native language. Every single frame, every expression, every ridiculous situation became ammunition for the meme revolution. Think about it, what other show has given us such a vast arsenal of reaction images? Tired? There's a Squidward for that. Confused? SpongeBob's blank stare has got you covered. Feeling sarcastic? Just slap on that SpongeBob chicken meme. The show has become a universal translator for human emotion, transcending language barriers faster than Gary can say meow. SpongeBob was speaking internet language before the internet even knew what language it wanted to speak. And can we talk about the background gags? While most cartoons were focusing on the main action, SpongeBob's artists were playing 4D chess, hiding jokes in every corner of the screen. They treated every frame like a tiny canvas for chaos. You could watch an episode 50 times and still catch new details. The show even revolutionized how cartoons could sound. From that squeaky walk cycle to bubble transitions, SpongeBob turned sound effects into an art form. The voice acting? Pure lightning in a bottle. Tom Kenny didn't just voice SpongeBob. He created a laugh that would echo through the halls of every elementary school for decades to come. Sorry, teachers. But SpongeBob's success was not just about being in the right place at the right time. It had a massive psychological impact on us, and it's probably the biggest reason we are still hooked to this show. I want you to think about your childhood. You would sit cross-legged in front of your TV. You were mesmerized. It was fun to watch, and you would get angry if your mom asked you to stop watching SpongeBob SquarePants and do your homework. Well, turns out your brain was doing some heavy lifting while you were laughing at Patrick's one-liners. SpongeBob was basically rewiring your neural pathways. The show was making your brain addicted. Think about it. SpongeBob's glass-half-full attitude was teaching you a masterclass in resilience. Here's a guy who fails his driving test countless times and still bounces back with a "I'm ready" every single time. Talk about turning lemons into lemonade. Or, in this case, turning failure into a running gag that somehow made us all feel better about our own shortcomings. For many kids, SpongeBob became the ultimate role model for kindness, curiosity, and creativity. He's not the kind of hero who flies around saving the world or solving big mysteries. No, SpongeBob's superpower is his attitude. He finds joy in the little things and treats everyone with kindness, whether they're his best friend Patrick or his perpetual grump of a neighbor, Squidward. This boundless positivity likely inspired kids to view the world with a bit more optimism. But here's where it gets really interesting and slightly controversial. In 2011, a study dropped that claimed that just 9 minutes of SpongeBob could affect kids' short-term attention spans. The media had a field day. "SpongeBob makes you dumber," screamed the headlines. Think about it. The show's rapid-fire humor and non-stop antics affect children's attention spans, especially for younger kids who are still developing focus and impulse control. The quick cuts and fast-paced plot lines, often jumping from one wild scenario to the next, make it harder for kids to engage with slower activities like reading or tasks that require concentration. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. What these headlines missed was the show's incredible impact on creative problem-solving. I mean, when SpongeBob faced a problem, did he ever solve it the normal way? Absolutely not. He taught kids that there's no such thing as a stupid solution. Okay, maybe some of Patrick's ideas were questionable, but SpongeBob taught us that there are just different ways of looking at the same problem. SpongeBob's imagination and sense of play are another big influence. He is constantly finding new adventures, whether it's pretending to be a pirate or making jellyfishing an Olympic-level sport. During those golden days, watching SpongeBob showed us that everyday life could be a playground. That imagination can make even the simplest things exciting. This sense of wonder is something we took with us, making SpongeBob an unintentional ambassador for creativity. And let's talk about emotional intelligence. Yeah, I'm going there. While other shows were giving us black and white heroes and villains, SpongeBob was serving up characters more complex than the secret Krabby Patty formula. Take Plankton. Sure, he's the villain, but he's also a small business owner fighting against a monopoly. That's some heavy stuff hiding behind microscopic comedy. Then there's the content itself. Some parents raised eyebrows at the occasional bits of adult humor and subtle innuendos slipped into the show. While these jokes often flew right over kids' heads, they didn't go unnoticed by watchful parents, who sometimes question whether a sponge should really be using words like barnacles.
The barnacle? What the barnacle is that?
Barnacles.
As a stand-in for something much spicier. On top of that, SpongeBob's often bizarre and nonsensical humor might make it harder for kids to differentiate between what's playful absurdity and real-life behavior. For instance, SpongeBob's relentless optimism is inspiring, but his over-the-top reactions to stress or problems might unintentionally encourage kids to ignore real feelings or bypass serious issues with humor alone. Some studies have suggested that younger viewers may even mirror his high-energy, impulsive tendencies, which could lead to struggles in managing their emotions effectively. And then is the issue of SpongeBob's interactions with characters like Squidward and Plankton, which often rely on insults, practical jokes, and one-sided power dynamics. I know they're intended as humor, but don't you think this dynamic could teach kids that teasing or belittling others is an acceptable way to handle conflict? I think it can potentially lead to misunderstandings about healthy social relationships. Still, you can say that SpongeBob was simply a source of joy. He taught us that it's okay to be weird, that friendship is everything, and that a little bit of laughter can make any day brighter. Whether he was influencing attention spans or just bringing smiles, SpongeBob shaped how a generation of kids saw the world. He showed us that it's okay to embrace your inner sponge, to be optimistic, loyal, and maybe a little bit silly. And as we grew up, many of us found that those lessons stayed with us, even as adults. But here's where it gets really interesting. The show was secretly preparing us for the real world. I mean, every Krusty Krab episode is basically Workplace Ethics 101. Want to learn about employee rights? Watch SpongeBob deal with Mr. Krabs' increasingly ridiculous demands. Need a crash course in business competition? The Krusty Krab versus Chum Bucket rivalry is basically economics for beginners, with extra tartar sauce. But SpongeBob didn't just leave a mark on our childhoods. It basically created a legacy. I mean, we're talking about a franchise worth billions of dollars, with merchandise selling faster than Krabby Patties on a Sunday morning. But it's not just about the money. SpongeBob fundamentally changed how we think about children's entertainment. Before SpongeBob, most kids' shows followed a pretty rigid formula. Teach a lesson, wrap it up neatly, maybe throw in a catchy song. But SpongeBob, this yellow revolutionary, threw that formula into the Krusty Krab deep fryer. It showed that kids could handle absurdist humor, they could appreciate complexity, that they didn't need everything spelled out for them like they were taking their boating test. And look at shows like Gumball or Rick and Morty. That blend of surreal humor and clever commentary, that's SpongeBob's DNA right there. The ability to work on multiple levels to entertain kids while making their parents laugh at completely different jokes. SpongeBob wrote that playbook, in my opinion. But perhaps the most impressive part of SpongeBob's legacy is how it bridges generations. Parents who watched it as kids are now showing it to their own children, and the jokes still land. The humor still works, the messages still resonate. In a world where most pop culture ages about as well as an overcooked Krabby Patty, SpongeBob remains fresh as ever. So what makes this absorbent yellow guy so absolutely timeless? See, while other shows from the 90s and early 2000s have faded, SpongeBob has thrived, and I think I know why. It's a show that grows up with you. As kids, we laugh at Patrick getting hit with a coconut. As teenagers, we related to Squidward's existential dread. And as adults, well, suddenly we understand why Mr. Krabs is so obsessed with money. Inflation, am I right? The jokes evolve with our understanding of the world. And let's be honest, in today's world, we kind of need SpongeBob more than ever. When everything feels heavy, when adult life gets too adulty, sometimes you need to remember how to find joy in the simple things, like a perfect Krabby Patty, or a best friend who, despite being dumber than a sack of sea cucumbers, always has your back. Or the pure satisfaction of annoying your grumpy neighbor with excessive optimism. So maybe that's why 20 plus years later, you're still not ready to say goodbye to that pineapple under the sea. Because SpongeBob is a reminder of who you used to be, and sometimes who you still wish you could be. And hey, if nothing else, at least we finally know that the Krabby Patty secret formula was